If you are just joining us, there's breaking news coming out of Gaza where 4 Al Jazeera journalists have been murdered in a targeted Israeli strike. Anas al-Sharif, Mohammed Koraika, cameraman Ibrahim Zafar and assistant Mohammed Nafal and a 5th person were killed. Anas was murdered after a tent for journalists was hit outside the main gate of the hospital. The well-known Al Jazeera correspondent reported it extensively from northern Gaza. The 28-year-old was a key source of news from Gaza City and the north for international audiences since Israel's war on the Strip began some 22 months ago. Just a few weeks ago, Anas al-Sharif broke down in tears as he was covering hunger in Gaza. In that moment, a man is heard encouraging him to continue the coverage, saying, "You are our voices," and here is that moment.
من شدة الجوع ومن شدة الألم ومن شدة القهر والآن ونحن نتحدث هذه العربة التي دخلت إلى مجمع الشفاء تحمل مصابين مجوعين أيضا. استمر يا أستاذ أنس، استمر أنت صوتنا.
Well, let's get back to Hada Abdel Hamid Anaman. She's in the Jordanian capital because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting in Israel and the occupied West Bank. Hada, we talked earlier, the Israeli army has admitted to murdering this Al Jazeera crew. What more do we have at the moment after their claims that Anas was part of a Hamas cell without providing any proof?
Well, in the statement, the Israeli army says that it has murdered Anas al-Sharif because they allege actually that he was part of Hamas.
Mohammed Shahada is a Palestinian analyst and writer from Gaza and senior fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations. He's in Copenhagen. Thank you so much for joining us. And once again, talking to you just about 45 minutes ago or thereabouts, we only thought that there was one Al Jazeera journalist who had been murdered. Now it turns out that there are 4, possibly 5. Is there any end to this? Is there any limit or red lines to journalists being targeted?
Well, Israel is killing journalists for the same reason that it invaded every single hospital in Gaza. Back when Israel was about to invade Al-Shifa hospital, they came up with the lie that underneath it was Hamas's largest headquarters ever. And they came up with this animation CGI video. When they reached to the hospital, an Israeli commander, a senior source, commented on this. He said, "We invaded to the hospital to send a message to people in Gaza. There's nothing safe. Nothing is beyond our reach." If Israel can kill Gaza's most prominent journalist in public view and admit to his murder and bomb him in a hospital in a tent full of journalists and get away with it, it is primarily to send a message to the population that's what's about to come next is going to be your darkest nightmares. It'll be Gaza's complete and total annihilation, encircling Gaza City, bombing it incessantly, pushing people out while preemptively creating an informational blackout by assassinating Gaza's top and most prominent journalists. Israel knew that Anas al-Sharif was not going to leave Gaza City because in the past 22 months of genocide, no matter how much Israel tried to get journalists and get Gazans to leave the northern half of the enclave, Anas was one of the few that refused and stood there for the entire time, even after the killing of his father, even after the bombing of his home. He was there the whole time. So they understood they have to take him out, along with the remaining journalists that have become Gaza's voice to the world and the world's eyes and ears into the genocide in order to advance with the final phase of Israel's genocide in Gaza.
Well, absolutely. And when we look at this, it's only about an hour and a half, nearly 2 hours ago, that it was his last post on X, where he talked about that Israel was now openly threatening a full-scale invasion of Gaza. And that is something that he's been warning about for a while. And you're saying at the moment that is something which is going to happen.
Absolutely. You basically have the Israelis laying out their plan very openly. It was reported in Ma'arif, one of Israel's main newspapers, and they said that the plan would be encircling Gaza completely, banning food and water and medicine from going in, bombing it incessantly by land, air, and sea, forcing the population out at gunpoint, designating anyone who remains as a Hamas terrorist. And then the final phase is flattening everything that is in Gaza City right now, the largest urban center that remains of the enclave, in the exact same way that they are flattening Rafah now to near completion, as well as Beit Hanun, Beit Lahia, Khan Yunis, and Jabalia. So it's about implementing the general's plan, the notorious plan that Israel's infamous general Giora Island came up with, of weaponizing starvation, disease, and full destruction, full annihilation against the population in Gaza, not against Hamas, but against Gaza's entire population.
So, Mohammed, the question is, what is their end game?
The end game is to now concentrate the entire population in Gaza in a concentration camp in Rafah. That's literally the verbatim description of Israel's intention, according to many of its opposition leaders and prominent journalists. They said Israel will establish a concentration camp in Rafah. Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, announced the intention to establish such a camp, and he said we will concentrate 600,000 people, and then the entire population, and anyone that remains in Gaza would be considered a terrorist. Everybody else that would go into that camp would not be allowed back into Gaza again. They would be crowded, lined up on the Egyptian borders in the anticipation of, when the opportunity comes, either forcing them with coercion and pressure to choose to leave Gaza or expelling them out of Gaza at gunpoint. We heard from Israel's finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, saying that we are destroying everything that remains of Gaza. And we heard from Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, in May, saying that we are destroying homes in Gaza one by one, so people would have nothing to go back to, and they would have to leave. And that's what Israel is implementing now. Israel destroyed about 92% of all homes in Gaza. It's now about destroying the 8% that's left completely, or finishing the complete destruction of homes that have been heavily damaged. I have family members and friends who are literally sleeping and staying in the ruins of their homes that are partially or heavily damaged. Although the roofs can collapse on them at any minute, they decided to stay there because it's way better than staying on the street in the desert heat and in the large suffocating humidity in Gaza at the moment. And no matter what Israel tries to say about its assassination of Anas tonight, one thing that you need to keep in mind is Israel has been lying incessantly since the beginning of the genocide. It's been the cornerstone of Israel's genocidal campaign to lie every single day about everything possible and to come up with the most lunatic lies possible, imaginable. Israel lied about massacring the ambulance workers in Rafah. They lied about the GHF massacres. They lied about the Shifa Hospital, the Flower Massacre, the beheaded babies, Hamad Hospital, Hind Rajab, the terror list at the Rantisi Hospital that turned out to be a calendar, the World Central Kitchen workers, babies in ovens, white phosphorus, deliberately starving Gazans, Sinwar surrounding himself with 20 hostages in a tunnel, gassing hostages, the Ahli Hospital, killing women and children with white flags, mass raping Palestinians, non-existent tunnels under graveyards, Nasser Hospital, Hussam Abu Safiya, mass graves, snipers targeting kids in the heads, providing protection to criminal gangs that are looting aid systematically. Israel also lied about wiping out Gaza incrementally, gradually. They lied about refusing and collapsing the ceasefire, blowing up Gazans fleeing now south, blowing up and destroying Kamal Udwan Hospital, claiming that dead Gazan children are fake plastic dolls, creating alleged safe zones that they push the people into and they bomb them once they get there. They lied about the general's plan. They lied about how many Hamas militants they killed, about the Red Crescent taking part in October 7th. That was another lie. They lied about how many journalists they've killed, and they lied about designating previous journalists as Hamas militants. They lied about Muhammad Abu Silmiya, the head of the Shifa Hospital. They lied about the Indonesian hospital, about UNRWA, Al-Auda Hospital, killing women sheltering at a church, bombing the church again, bombing another church, destroying every single university in Gaza, destroying the overwhelming majority of schools in Gaza, blowing up Gaza's Turkish cancer hospital, the sole cancer hospital in Gaza. They lied about Hamas hiding giant stockpiles of fuel in Rafah and Hamas looting aid. They lied about finding active smuggling tunnels in Rafah. They lied about hostages that would return pregnant. And they lied about who killed Yussi Sharabi, Itai Sevrisky, and other hostages as well that the IDF themselves killed. And after all these lies, Israel comes up and says, but trust us, our next lie will be 100% true. Trust us. You should attach as much value to Israel's allegations about Anas al-Sharif as you attach to the dust on the floor. Because without lies at this stage, without lies, Israel's narrative dies completely. It's the only way they can sustain the genocide.
Mohammed, thank you. Mohammed Shahada there from the European Council on Foreign Relations.